The novel that I am presenting for my novel presentation for my English class is called Billy Budd Sailor by Herman Melville. Herman Melville was born on August 1st in New York City in 1819. He died in New York as well on September 28th, 1891. You may remember him from his best novel, which was highly acclaimed, called Moby Dick. That's what he was most famous for, and that was one of his greater works. Just a little bit about him. Mid-1830s is when he really began writing because he was having a bit of financial problems with his family, and he was enrolled at the Albany Classical School where he studied classic literature and began writing. A lot of his adventures that he took, including the Marquesas Islands, was really which inspired him to start writing, which inspired him to write his first novel, which is called Type. Now on to the actual novel. The novel Billy Budd Sailor is basically about a young sailor who's accused of mutiny with him and his crew, and the antagonist of the whole story, which is Claggart, kind of makes him accused of this. Most of the problems that you will see in the book, or most of the interaction, is between Captain Veer and Billy, and they are symbolic characters within themselves. The story begins with him aboard the Rights of Man, which is one of his ships that he used to explore, and mostly it's just talking about that and talking about his backstory behind it. Also, the dramatic climax that every story has is basically between Billy Budd and Claggart when Claggart dies. Like said before, the major characters of this novel are Billy Budd, Captain Veer, and Claggart. Well, John Claggart is his name. And there's many other characters, but the three major characters that this is focused on are those three, which I just said. Billy Budd can be seen as a very sweet and innocent person, and he's basically, like I said, is based off of his purity and his innocence, which isn't always a good thing. He was blinded by the open-handed nature, and because he was so innocent, he often was played, and he really didn't have a lot of true friends, like I said, which is Claggart, and he was misjudged by his malevolence. Claggart is the master-at-arms of the ship, and he is also seen as the villain, which does accuse Billy of mutiny. He can be seen as the story's antagonist, and overall, he hides his motives and his intentions, and he obtains the substance from envy. So he's very, very, very evil-based, so you won't really see much of a good thing coming from him. Captain Veer is the convening authority, the prosecutor, the defense counsel, basically the head honcho in charge when it comes to his mutiny charges. He himself symbolizes conflict with the inner self versus the law, the self-conscious versus the law, right versus wrong, when your mind's telling you one thing, but the law actually says the right thing when your mind's telling you the wrong thing to do. He ignores his inner emotions, as some people would subconsciously think. He's also known to disregard his own feelings and push it upon other people, which shows that he has no compassion at all. This was written about America's higher time, which is the golden age that we all know of. Some very important themes of this novel include individuals versus society, conscience versus law, as I said before, and the vulnerability of innocence. Individuals versus society basically means individuals versus society, what we as individuals think and how we act versus what society wants us to think and how society wants us to act, which is mainly true. Conscience versus law is basically what we think in our head versus what the law actually states. Because 9 times out of 10, if you think about it, the conscience isn't really all that good. And law, like we all know, is all strictly good. So sometimes the two clash. The vulnerability of innocence, just like Billy Budd, when his purity and his innocence kind of get in the way of his friendships, the way he misjudged Claggart, as a friend, which he turned out to be really bad. Um, Innocence isn't really always good because things pass over your head, things pass over your mind, and you really aren't able to analyze things as they should be analyzed. It's not always a good thing, but it makes you extremely, extremely vulnerable to the harsh people and the harsh things around you in the world. A couple of symbolisms are the ships and, of course, Billy Budd. And with the ships, each ship itself represents a whole type of society. Basically, how different societies act different ways, how they operate different ways. Each of the ships operate a different way. Each had its own norm and its own background to it. Billy Budd himself was the most important symbol, being that the novel was about him, but he's also a contradicting symbol in the story, representing purity and innocence, when the whole entire story is kinda the other way around. The author's use of literary devices include imagery, allegory, and also ambiguity. Overall, this novel was great. It challenged the mind and it got you thinking. It kept you on your toes. It is difficult to understand, which is all the more reason why you should want to read it. It was extremely groundbreaking, and like I said, it kept me on my toes. It was great. It was a short tale of good, evil, and the disturbing injustice of circumstances. Whether it's pure innocence, law, your conscience, society, all of that. Like I said, it's difficult to understand, but in the end, it leaves your thoughts of alternate endings, so to speak. I would highly recommend this novel because, in actuality, all of Melville's novels are great, including his greatest work, Moby Dick. This is a very in-depth book, and it does a great job of introducing symbolism and develop metaphors for developed readers. It's a character-driven novel, and it's very, very thought-provoking, and it's very layered. So you can't just read it in one sitting, so to speak. You'd have to read, go back and analyze, and just think about, what's going on. It's basically an unfinished literary work, and it's just something so short and simple can be very misleading and very intelligent, but disturbing and thought-provoking at the same time. So like I said, overall, I would recommend this book. This book was a great book. It had a great ending, even though the ending wasn't finished. So I definitely recommend this book. It was great as far as the adventure goes. It was great as far as, an English class goes, whether you need to analyze it, read it just to read it, have you get symbols over it or write a paper over it. It's really, really good. And I do suggest that you all take it in consideration of reading the book and having those thought-provoking questions in mind.